Our dearest audiences, good morning and good evening. Ohayo gozaimasu, konbanwa. Thank you for joining us today. I am Makoto Hoshino, a board member of MIT Alumni Association joining from Tokyo. I am pleased and honored to join you as an organizer of today's program held by MIT AA, but honestly, I'm a bit nervous as well. Probably more nervous than the day I turned in my thesis to my advisor back in 1984 at the MIT Graduate School. By the way, please note that this event is going to be recorded and you can use Q&A chatting anytime you want during this presentation. Today, you will momentarily learn how One Bangkok was planned and designed by a few of MIT alumni, supported by sophisticated local professionals. This project is now reputed as one of the smartest, the most sustainable, sophisticated, yet the richest urban development in Asia, led by the multinational team, mainly consisting of SOM, an American major design firm, A49, the most influential design firm in Thailand, and Frasers Property, one of the most capable developer of Thailand. I wanted to share this development process with you for following reason, which is a mutual respect of the team members hand in hand might have been a key to success of the project. Thailand, located about 180 degrees away from Boston, on the northern hemisphere, has a unique culture with its long history as an independent kingdom since medieval days, unlike many other countries in Asia. The kingdom has long nurtured its highly fragrant culture with devout Buddhism as a backbone. Our alumni have cherished and respected this rich culture throughout the process of development, and thus the project is being led to substantial success, I think. I hope today's event would contribute not only to MIT community or young students in particular who think over their professional career in future, but all others practicing international project. However, my wish doesn't end here, everyone. I have a dream. One day, with this mutual respect extended over the world, not hostilities or self-assertion, we will have a peaceful world with no quarrel, no fight. I have a dream that we have a world where we don't hurt each other and no war. Lastly, I thank MIT community, which has long helped me on building my own professional career. Jackie and Amy of Alumni Relations, board members of MIT AA, Jose and Andrea in particular, for navigating today's event. Also, my special thanks go to today's presenters for their voluntary and enthusiastic endeavor for preparing and completing this program in spite of their day-to-day business. And also to Lek Prabhakon, the president of A49, who is my lifetime friend, for his precious assistance. I'm lucky enough and blessed for I have such a great MIT classmate like Ellen Liu, who is currently a principal of SOM and who is moderating today's presentation. My opening remark finishes here by introducing her, everyone. Please welcome Ellen Liu. ご清聴ありがとうございました. Thank you for listening to me. Ellen?
Thank you, Makoto. Like he just mentioned, the One Bangkok project is and international collaboration. So it's master planned by SOM, which is based in the US, but with close collaboration with the Bangkok architecture firm, Architects 49. So within the master plan, buildings are undertaken by multiple architects, contributing to the diverse characteristic of the place, the city of Bangkok. The developer, Fraser Property Holdings Thailand, has put together a global team for this project, which also includes the Japanese contractor Takanaka Corporation, where Makoto was part of the leadership. So today, some of them in the morning, some of us are at night. We will start a presentation. Pichai, Deputy Managing Director of Architects 49, will get going with the introduction of the culture, and then followed by Jason Fisher, Senior Associate Principal with SOM, and then Russell Kim, Chief Design and Innovation Officer of Frasers Properties Holdings Thailand, will wrap up the presentation from the developer's perspective. And then after that, Jose will moderate the Q&A session. Pichai, over to you.
Sorry, I think I'm unmute already. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you, MIT Architecture Alumni, for this opportunity for me to be part of this panel discussion on One Bangkok in Thailand. And I wish I could be MIT alumni, but I'm a Wolverine, so I went to Michigan. So I'll try my best to do the task today. I hope you guys know Bangkok, which is the capital city of Thailand in the Southeast Asian countries. Next, please. We are very, like Makoto's introductions, we are very proud as a nation to be a monarchy, constitution monarchy. This is the picture of our past king, Rama IX, who's really, really well loved and respected. He worked so hard for the country. As you can see in the picture below, that was a celebration of his anniversary. So this is the country where we have really worship our king, and he leads the country in the direction that we are aim to prosper. Next, please. We also the country of Buddhism. 95% of the population are Buddhist, and of course we are well integrated with other religion beliefs as well. So we can find that we have very few issues with the religious problem in Thailand. Next, please. You can see the city of Bangkok is quite, in a way, chaotic. You can see the mix between these real photographs of the, in the center, you have the grand giant monument of the Buddha in the city itself. This is a real picture, it's not a collage. And then on the left, you can see this mix of high-rise in the city center. At the same time, on the river, you can see the very monumental Buddhist architecture, which is quite famous if you know Thailand well. Next, please. This is the general scene that we can see every day. The traffic, tuk-tuk, the night market, the floating market, and also the giant that guards the temple. And these are the richness of the culture and the environment in Thailand, in Bangkok in particular. Next, please. Also, arts and architecture is very important to the Thais. You can see that culturally we have very beautiful art and dance and the costumes, the architecture itself, And you can see also on the left, the mix of architecture, which is colonial architecture, that is part of the time in the past, over 100 years ago. So these are the mix with the Thai architecture, the colorful art, the colorful culture, and that's represent Thailand. Next, please. So you want to go on this, Jason?
Yeah, sure.
I can explain a little bit. The old city, historic city center, you can see on the left, next to the main river through Bangkok is Chao Phraya River. Come through from the north and all the way down to the Gulf of Thailand. And this is where the city of Bangkok started over 200 years ago. And then the CBD area keep growing east towards the eastern side. And One Bangkok is pretty much at the edge of the existing CBD area, and the city is growing more so towards the east. You can, Jason, put down future port redevelopment. That is about 1,000 acres land developments that potentially has a future to be developed soon, also next to the river. So if you want to add, Jason, please do.
Yeah, sure. No, it was an exciting opportunity for us at SOM to work on this fantastic site and kind of continue with the growth of the city and do it in hopefully a way that everyone loves. So yeah, very well explained, and thanks, Pichai, for the introduction. Go to the next slide. So hello, everyone. Jason Fisher from SOM. I'm here in the Chicago office. And we actually started work on this project back in 2016 with the overall master plan of One Bangkok. Quite a few years afterwards, between around 2016 to current day, we've been working alongside many other architects, designers, and engineers of individual buildings, and really benefited from the collaboration across the site. So here you can see just some of the towers that are called out. There's KPF, there's SOM, there's A49. There's a whole retail environment that's done by other architects and designers, as well as numerous engineers and consultants along the way. So what you saw on the previous slide was the overall master plan and design work after many years of development and collaboration between architects and working with our clients. But before we got there, we wanted to start with some of the important design principles and concepts from the start of the master plan phase. Originally called Swan Loop Village, we tried to organize a very large site and prominent site by looking at the shape and pedestrian-friendly scale of the historic areas of Bangkok. So we tried to bring a little bit of that sort of really nice chaos and intimate scale to the site of One Bangkok. These dense and meandering streets respond to the climate and provided a dynamic and varied urban experience. And we tried to bring that dynamic and varied urban experience to the scale to subdivide this very large parcel, define distinct and complementary programs and uses, and accommodate a large open space at the center of the site. We'll touch on the importance of that in just a little bit. Retail and pedestrian networks began to define a more intimate experience at multiple levels. You can see here the scale, the shading, the density of urban development. And to get to that point, we also studied the forms and vernacular of the architecture of the area. Very beautiful architecture that Pichai was mentioning previously. And then we tried to implement the forms in modern ways while still maintaining distinct architectural character and sustainability principles. We looked at specific examples of great public spaces across Asia, Thailand, the Philippines, China, among many other places in the region, as well as in our own backyard in Chicago, for inspiration and case studies as we developed the master plan. Throughout the master plan phase, we held on strongly to the idea of a great public open space shown here in the early version of the master plan. And to achieve the best possible public open space, we leveraged grade change across the site to cover parking and vehicular circulation and prioritize pedestrian circulation across a multi-level ground plane. Of course, we couldn't ignore the stunning landscapes across the country, and particularly adjacent to our site with Lumpini Park, one of the great large-scale green spaces of Bangkok. And here you can see an overall view of One Bangkok from Lumpini Park, creating an impressive new skyline looking east. And before tackling the architectural design of these buildings by SOM, a few important things to note. First, the overall site, scale, and design principles of the master plan remain throughout the entire process. And second, shortly after the master plan phase, other architects joined the design process, which created a really great collaborative effort. I recall design meetings in our evenings where KPF was presenting and we were listening in, and then we would present and other architects were listening in. And it was a way to test the validity of our ideas, hear a local perspective, refine our ideas, and then keep the process going. So it was kind of like the great studio environments that we all know, but done at a kind of a professional scale and on a really fantastic site. Of the three buildings from SOM here shown on screen, I'm going to dive into a bit more detail on the tower on the far right, which is the signature tower and was my particular role on this project as an architect. So we call it the signature tower primarily because it's the tallest building in the master plan and anchors the edge of that open space. And from the beginning, there was a desire to find a form that made a strong impression on the skyline, but also related to the city through nature, culture, and climate. We tested several approaches, but landed on a tower form that related to the specific flora of the region. So here there was almost like an accounting of all the different flowers that we found prevalent in the area. We examined these components of the flowers and related them back to the facade and interior spaces of the building. So here you can see even some of the soft curves of the form we were trying to draw inspiration from. The shape and tapering was not just an exercise in form making, but was actually derived from least depths of office space, as well as floor plan arrangements of hotel rooms at the top of the building. So you can see the program stack on the right-hand side, very typical for these mixed-use buildings to have some taper. And we tried to really reinforce that idea of the relationship back to nature. Throughout the design process, we looked to local culture, vernacular architecture, and landscape forms for inspiration. You see some of the flora, you see the Lantern Festival here in the middle, and then some vernacular architecture where we're trying to draw inspiration of geometry and lighting and other architectural elements. And at the lobby of the building, we proposed a series of kinetic louvers that would change position depending on the location of the sun. So you would benefit from views out, but be able to protect the interior spaces, much like a flower might change its shape and orientation as the day progresses. The typical office facade has a series of deep louvers for shading, creating kind of reinforcing that diagram of the outer petals being a protective element of the kind of flower shape. The seams in between the petals were a series of vertical fins to direct views out while maintaining privacy between hotel rooms, especially at the top of the building. Here you can see the fins orienting your view. And the benefit of that was we were able to achieve stunning views out to Lumpini Park and the surrounding city from the upper levels and from hotel suites. So here the shape and expression of the organic form is seen above the surrounding city, and we hope that it was a form and an icon of the city that could be related back to the place that it was created. Being the last phase of the overall master plan, we are looking forward to upcoming design work on this building. And with that, I'll hand it over to Pichai to talk about the work of A49 and his team on the site.
Thank you, Jason. We have been fortunate enough to work on this project. It's been our 8th year. running, and we will have the grand opening by the end of this year. And then right now, like Jason said, we are working on the O4 tower, signature tower. Hopefully, it will be happening soon. I'd like to present 3 smaller projects on site. That would be part of the master plan that gracefully planned and designed by SOM. And we stick to that from the very beginning until now. And I think it proves to be working quite well. Next, please. Location-wise, the H2A hotel is about 200, over 200 keys hotels, sitting in front seats facing the main park. Lumpini Park is a very historical and similar to, in a way, New York City of Central Park, but it's much smaller. It's an old park that everyone cherished. However, we have the site located here, so we have to take full advantage of being a hotel sitting in front of the park itself. So we cherish greenery and the park, and we try to bring it up to the building itself. And at the same time, from the building, we want to make sure that most of the space, or the guest room, the public facilities, we have its own front seat towards the park, Green Park itself. Next, please. So this is pretty much the view towards the park. Not quite exactly the size of Central Park, New York, but it's good enough. It's very important historically, and it's also being part of the lungs of Bangkok, where greeneries are scarce. So you can see in the plan itself that we try to capture the view of the building. Being a small plot, we have to try our best architecturally to take advantage of being in front of the park itself. Next, please. So conceptual diagram of the tower itself is like an L shape facing the park. So we want to make sure that the building has dialogue with the smaller scale retail in the base, and also backdrops of the high tall towers behind the hotel itself. We want to bring in the greeneries from the park towards the building, so it does have its own dialogue together from the building and the park itself. Next, please. You can see in the layout, in the plan of the typical guest room, that majority of the guest room are facing the park. Even though we have it sideways, we try to tilt it so that we make sure that once you enter the room, you can have a great view towards the Green Park as well as the simulation of the photo of the rendering on the right-hand side. And the building itself is having tiers of greenery. It's bringing up also to the top where destination bar and restaurant is at. And we want to bring in the tree tops to the top, trees to the top of the tower as well. Next, please. So that's the restaurant at the top, and we want to make sure that caps off the scenery of Bangkok City, in particular at night. Next, please. So this is the rendering of the building looking from the park itself. And then you can see the drop-off location that we're working still now today with Hyatt. It's going to be the first Andaz in Bangkok itself. Next. So the current, this is the construction stage photograph. I'm not sure we have the real today's photograph in the presentation, but it's pretty much clean up, and it's going to be ready for the grand opening by the end of the year. Next. So the second building, H2B, is another small, it's like a boutique hotel. This is the smallest building on site. The size is probably less, it's about 20,000 square meters GFA. It does have its very key location sitting on top of the Civic Plaza, which is the open space in the center of the whole master plan. Next, please. So in this building, we are looking at bringing back the old Bangkok towards One Bangkok, in line with the master plan ideas that Jason has mentioned early on. This is the old Bangkok, which is over 200 years old. The architecture is more the combination of Western classical architecture blending in with the tropical climate, tropical country like Thailand. So you can see the mix, so-called colonial architecture, which is you can see around in Bangkok, also in Southeast Asia, many areas. So we try to bring that language back into the modern buildings that we're working on today. Next, please. And that's the samples of the buildings in the old city of Bangkok, where it started. Next. We try to take the proportion of the openings in the form and so that can be replicated into the building in a modern way. Next. And that's the result of actually the final scheme that we have finally achieved. We didn't have actually on this one, we have been working for quite some time in a small building to be part of the project. But for us, it's very important because it's being the smallest baby on the project. We want to make sure that it does have its own character that anchor also the Civic Plaza, which is in the heart of the project. So we have that great opportunity to be a little bit more playful and colorful. So we want to bring that old Bangkok in a modern way into the heart of One Bangkok. Next, please. And that's the photograph of the construction on site. This is probably take a few months ago. Now it's all cleaned up. And I think we did achieve what we are looking for. Next. And the last project I want to present to you today is the Forum. Forum is about 30,000 square meters space for art and culture. So it's the area, the building is going to be used almost like a mixed use. No, it's like a multi-purpose kind of space, but aiming more towards art and culture and entertainment and music and show and concert. Location of the building is tucked in the corner. Sorry, excuse me. Tucked in the corner between the signature tower on the south and also on the west is the office tower 03. And then next, please. So sidewise, it's located almost at the corner. This is the view access that we feel very important to the project because it's sort of well hidden behind those two towers in the corner. So we are looking at organic form and want to make the building unique and standing out because being a smaller building on the plot. Next, please. So we look at art in various ways that we want to make sure this is the place for art. It's probably the only building that is the cultural building on the project. Next. Location-wise at that corner, but it does have a very important axis connecting the corner of that building to anchor, also working with the Civic Plaza and the approaches of the arrival for everyone that coming into One Bangkok. Next. We want to make sure in terms of design of the mass, we want to make sure that the space, which is public space of the building, having dialogue with the open space and the center and the Civic Plaza of the project, that it does relate functionally as well as visually to the building. Next. In designing the project, with the mass, we're looking at several options that we work with, and we end up with the final one, which is at the lower right-hand corner, which is organic form. Functionally, it's quite almost like a box inside the building, but then we want to make sure that it does have its own character, trying to compete and work with all these magnificent buildings designed by SOM. Next. So we look at, in terms of form, we look at something that relates to the Thai culture, which is the fluidity of the water. So Thai culture and water are closely related. You can see that the city itself started from the riverbank of the Chao Phraya River. So, and we are the country with lots of water. You can find that flooding comes around quite often as well. But in a nice way, we like the fluidity and the softness of the water, the rhythm, and also it does relate to the site itself. The site was being the first location of the radio station in Thailand. That's why the road next to it is called Wireless Road, because of that. So we want to make sure that the waves, it does relate to that radio wave signals as well. So we sort of try to blend the softness of the water and also the wave form to the building. Next, please. And that result in the facade. We look at the building being white to reflect whatever activities is gonna stage or event they're gonna stage in the building. So the building can be changed from time to time, depends on what's gonna happen inside. And it does, in a way, contrast with the surrounding a little bit, but at the same time, it will work in harmony with the building, surrounding buildings in One Bangkok. Next, please. And that's the result of a work that we work for quite some time. Next, please. Today, it's pretty much almost done. Next to Russell, I guess.
So it's my section. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Jason and Pichai, for such a great explanation of the projects within One Bangkok. It's been an amazing project by the two amazing architects, SOM and 849. As you can see here, master plan obviously was provided by SOM and Architects 49, who's our local architect of record. But both of them has worked on many of the components within One Bangkok as well. Again, next time you're in Bangkok, please come and visit One Bangkok. Let me show you around. It's a remarkable project. I've been on this journey for the last 8 years, completing the master plan design in 2016 with SOM and starting the concept design. But also at the same time, we simultaneously start the substructure and the foundation so we could expedite the whole process. So beginning in 2018, we started drilling piles, and then we have over 2,700 of them drilled in, and excavating and substructure work soon followed after the piling. After 8 years, we're closing in on completing the phase 1 in the end of this year, 2024. And also at the same time, starting to gear up for, confirming the programs and the timeline to start the phase 2 of the process this year. And we're targeting to finish by 2031. Next. Just to remind everybody again how large One Bangkok project is. It covers within the land area of 167,000 square meter, and we're building up to 1.83 million square meter of space at GFA, which is about close to about 20 million square feet, I think. One Bangkok will cover about 50% in public green space. And everything that I say from this moment on is again the results of how we've set up the master plan from the beginning. So if you look at the perspective, we have the Lumpini Park to the west and the Benjamin Park to the east. This Benjamin Park used to be a tobacco plant factory when I first joined the company to start the project, and it's converted into a landscape public park, and it's fully open, I think, last year. So when you combine all the park surrounding and One Bangkok, we're able to offer about 1.3 million square meter of green space, which is about 316 acres of urban landscape surrounding and in One Bangkok. Next. It's lagging behind a little bit. So from day one, we've set 13 master plan principles set by SOM, which has been categorized into these 3 core principle values: people centricity, sustainability, and smart city living. Next. So One Bangkok, at the heart of Bangkok, will have 5 office towers, 3 large retail precincts, 5 hotels, 3 residential towers, and 1 live entertainment venue cultural program, the Forum, and over 12,000 car park spaces. Now, phase 1 consists over all the components I just listed down, except for the signature tower and the 3rd residential tower. So everything that you see here, resembling very similar to how the master plan was set from day one. We're building about 75% in phase 1. Now, when fully complete, we're expecting to have about 60,000 captive population with up to about 250,000 people visiting daily. So approximately there'll be over 300,000 people on a daily basis at One Bangkok. Next. And to see One Bangkok project in perspective compared to the other, we've studied various major urban redevelopment projects across the globe, like Hudson Yards, IFC, Hong Kong, to name a few. If you look at One Bangkok, it's only taken 9 years to go from the design all the way to the construction, completion of phase 1. We hold the record for the fastest and largest project in Southeast Asia by a single private developer. Next. So we began on this journey with only 6 consultants during the master plan days, and grew to over 70 consultants of both international and local. And this number is still growing because we haven't finished phase 1, and we expect to get more in phase 2. Next. And as part of the pre-planning, we tried to get the designers and the clients together to align with the proper understandings of expectations and the requirements from day one, and finalize the design guidelines and the master plan principles before engaging with the rest of the consultants. As you can see on the left-hand side, we had a master plan consultant, a single team that regularly met to work out the details and complete the master plan dating back to 2016. And when we first had our kickoff meeting for the concept design, we had over 200 people coming in, doing a face-to-face. Then after that, we separated into 7 different teams, right? 5 zones, 1 basement, 1 external and landscape teams. And we ran weekly presentation meetings. Every day was filled with meetings from early mornings to late at night, depending on the time zones. Every 6 weeks, we had flown in every people back to Bangkok to have a face-to-face workshop with the client. And so this closeness, this collaboration, I think was a huge benefit as we move from the concept all the way to the construction execution. And as you see from the master plan or from the concept design stage to what you see on site is remarkably similar to how we set and achieve. Next. And this all started with our single vision by the chairman of the group, Jerome, which was to create a place that people can love and spend time in, to feel like you're an integral part of the city and be a global landmark, shying away from a tourist destination, but really becoming a global landmark. And I really firmly believe that we will be creating just that, if not more. So as you can see, you know, we've taken the 3 core principal values and we elaborate on them, and to achieve. Next. And as part of the placemaking and many outdoor public spaces offered, One Bangkok will provide pleasant, walkable streets to enhance walkability, boost well-being, and increase social engagement. As one of many positive response that came out of post-pandemic era. Next. And as part of the initial master plan principle, you know, we aim to achieve the highest sustainability design standards. And I believe we are set out to achieve, and we have officially been certified as LEED Neighborhood Platinum. All of our 5 office towers will be WELL Platinum, Wire Score, and Smart Score Platinum. First residential tower to achieve first WELL Gold. Next. So like I said before, we are officially certified as now LEED ND Platinum, first project in Southeast Asia to achieve such high standards. This has been a truly remarkable project by the development team with the design professionals. I believe we worked relentlessly to achieve the vision that was set out during the master plan days. So again, thank you for listening to much of the project and the presentation by Jason and Pichai. And I hope you are inspired by One Bangkok project, as I have been for the last 8 years. I think this comes to my end of the slide deck. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will go ahead with the question and answer sections. We have already 3 questions, but I invite everybody who's attending to make their own. But before going into the question and answer, I want to thank all presenters for such a beautiful program and for such a beautiful project. Well, there are, out of the 3 questions, let's start with a couple which are, I think, related. Scott Putney asked what was on the site before the project, and Fred Temple asked what was the ownership of the land? How was the land acquired? I guess.
Should I be the one answering this?
Yeah.
The site itself, as I mentioned a bit early on, it's a site where the first radio station was staged. So actually, we did mention that on site we have preserved, actually with the agreement with Crown Property, who's the owner of the land. I think, and also we agree, Frasers Property has agreed with the Fine Arts Department to rebuild the old radio station somewhere on site. So we treat that as like a memorial for that very important building. So the first time we have radio station in Thailand, and the real antenna is actually on site as well at the moment. Russell, you can also add on that. And also that's after that it's been changed to a military school for quite some time, for a few decades. before it being torn down and turned into the night market, as someone has answered, for the longest time. And so the Crown property has a process to develop this land. So it was out for bidding, and actually 2 rounds. The first round was won by Central Group, which is the largest retail group in Thailand. But I think maybe a decade passed without anything happening. And then they rebid again, and the Fraser property has won the bidding. And that's where One Bangkok has started. If you might want to add on, Russell.
No, I think he's covered most of the points. The radio station, cadet academy. I think it was also, back in the old days, it used to be the rice paddy field that used to supply for the rice to the city beyond. And so we've taken all the motifs and all the and also it used to be a night market as well. So we've taken all the motifs and actually we've embedded into the master plan and into the final design of One Bangkok.
If I may add, there's a few information as well. At the old days when the old Bangkok was next to the river, this part has been set aside for the nobles and the expats in the old days, over 100 years ago. So you can see that Wireless Road, there are a few embassies located on this street. So that it has some significance in terms of history. And also, as part of the site, is the first Thai boxing stadium, so-called Lumpini boxing stadium, now moved to the outskirts of Bangkok. So it does have that kind of historical tie to it. And some of the design elements on the projects has bring back all those memories to be part of the projects, be it interiors of some of the buildings, being some of the architecture treatment as well, as I mentioned earlier.
Well, there are 2 questions are related, or perhaps more specific from Brian Kelly. Were electrochromic windows considered in place of operable louvers? And Andrea Diaz Vaquero, she asked, do you also generate energy with solar panels, etc., to power Bangkok One, or you rely on the city's network?
I think on the operable louvers that had to do with the lobby of the signature tower. That was an early phase design idea. I don't think we really got into the weeds of operable louvers versus electrochromic glass. So we never really considered it, I think, and didn't really get a chance to even discuss with Russell and the client team on the exact solution there for the lobby. Not sure about other buildings on the site with electrochromic glass though.
No, I don't think we have any. I mean, we could definitely look into it for phase 2. But if I go into the solar panels discussion, let's see. We tried many features. We explored all the different options. We wanted to introduce features and incorporate features that really benefit the project as much as possible. So if you look at solar panels, it wasn't as successful in our view because we had a lot of the rooftops, but a lot of the buildings were providing all this shading across the rooftops. So we weren't getting enough the sun shading to have that solar panels to really be effective. We also looked at how we introduced BIPV, building incorporated photovoltaics as well for some of the facades that are facing south. But I think it's the same dilemma that we go through for many of the other projects as well. The cost is one. The warranty is not aligned to the curtain wall warranties. So some of the issues that we were facing, about, in my days of early designs back 15, 20 years ago, we still have that same obstacles that we need to overcome to make it very usable for the building. So that hasn't happened yet for the solar panels in our view.
Okay, there's a question from our dear Nina Marefat. How has the community responded? I guess she means the locals.
Sure, let me answer this one as well. We have a very, very strong and very great communications and relationship with the 7 communities that's surrounding our site. We had set up a working team that address and meet with the leaders of the 7 communities on a daily base or weekly base. At the time, I believe we still meet with them. We engage with any of the CSR, any of the events that happen around the surrounding communities. We support 100% with and sponsor all of the functions. We employ some of the community people in our project through the construction all the way to the operation stage. We plan to. So there's a real commitment that we show, and that hasn't changed from day one. And so we haven't had any bad reputations or bad communications with any of the surrounding communities to this date.
Great, thanks. Gonzalo Garcia is asking, what are the sources of funding for the project? Have any office leases been finalized, or are they still in the speculative stage?
Well, okay, I'll answer this one. So I'm not sure how detailed I should get in, but as typical projects, we invited the banks to start the financial having the bank loans to support financially for the project. Even though Frasers Property and TCC Group that own and manage this project, we also had some issues with the banks. The banks came in and were a little bit nervous. Even though, again, we're a very large company, we haven't done a project of this scale in Thailand, in Bangkok. So they were a little bit skeptical. So they came in and they gave us a really, very different terms and conditions. So our chairman said, go away. We'll take care of our own project. So he's actually funded personally through his financials. Now, I believe late last year, we invited the banks back on our terms and conditions. And so now we're we've officially and properly set up the financials to get the assistance from the banks to support this project. And in terms of the leasing, we're actually doing very well. Even though we're targeting phase 1 opening by the end of the year, we've actually opened partially due to the tenants coming in one of the office towers. And so our first office tower is officially open for some of the tenants that started coming in March, April, May. We partially opened retail to support these staff. And we opened the first MRT link in the basement as well. And so even though we're doing the official, the official event at the end of the year, we're partially open. Now, in terms of the tenancy for the offices, we're very strong. Again, the first tower, I think we're up to about 60%. For the second tower, we're past beyond 30, I think 35%. So it's getting to the point where, by the end of the year, we're confident we should be able to open with a very strong retail as well as the office tenancy.
Okay, there are 2 questions from Roger Torino. The first one is praising the attention to the street level experience and public space. He considers them compelling and refreshing compared to other large scale projects in the region. Are you planning? Are you thinking of this as an ideal model for an urban district? Is there a potential or intention for expansion of the development site to adjacent areas in the future? And if you could go on that, Russell.
Okay. So obviously, One Bangkok project is a huge project. You know, we're busy with our team as is. But you know, One Bangkok site does sit on this super block. Over time, I don't know when, it will expand across to the other areas adjacent to One Bangkok. But I haven't seen any of the recent plans yet, but I've been told that there will be an expansion. Along the Ramapur, we've already started developing the area. If you're familiar with Bangkok, you know, I think the main artery is running across east and west. It's on the Sukhumvit road with the BTS, the elevated metro system. We're trying to relocate the center and also relocate the artery to the Ramapur road, the south road of our project. And I believe we've already started setting up the projects all along the Ramapur. And so we've already started the expansion along this Ramapur road already. In terms of the traffic, obviously, One Bangkok, will definitely add more traffic. But I think One Bangkok, we haven't designed to resolve the traffic conditions in Bangkok. What we are trying to do is to make sure we don't overload them or make sure we don't create a bottleneck within the city. So we've gone into a few measurements within One Bangkok design. Like, for example, every zone, every entrance along the Ramapur wireless Embassy Road, there are several. And each of the roadways are going in and out on a different level so that we don't create a bottleneck on a single level. We extend the queue lines before exiting out from the basement as much as we can. We change the sidewalk conditions so we can create a bylane before you're entering into One Bangkok, so you don't again combine with the regular traffic coming through. We had gone through 3 different traffic consultants from the beginning to the middle to the end, so we could kind of test fit and reconfirm our assumptions made in those eras, to the point where before we finalized, we wanted to make sure the designs that we put in for the traffic design is meeting the current conditions of the traffic numbers and the data that we collect. MRT, we create 2 new linkages coming in underground. We understand this MRT network will overtake the BTS, the other state system, and we understand in the future it will play a vital role and a major role to reduce the people using the cars. But also, if you look at the project, our project sits on one of the 3 station site. So Lumpini Station is one of the stations where there's a new regulation coming in the next few years. Where if you're 500 meters away from this station, you're exempt to reduce the car park numbers by 25%. And so from 12,000 that I mentioned before, you will be reducing it down to 25% less. So again, we're making the future plans already in our development to adjust to that and make sure we're working with the cities of all the new changes coming through as well.
Right, Fred Temple is asking when will the commercial areas be open to the public?
October 2024.
Great. And
So I'm very
Scott, what-
confident.
Knock on wood.
knock on wood. And Scott Putney is asking if whether Bangkok is an geologically active area, were there any special considerations given to earthquake, monsoon winds, etc.?
Let me answer this. Bangkok is not in the seismic zone. But when we regulation-wise, I think Bangkok is, we have to design to respond to seismic almost like zone 1, and no more than zone 2. So we are lucky in that way. But like I mentioned a bit earlier, we are because of lots of water are involved, so we are prone to flooding. So we have to be very careful about flooding, in particular the basement, design of the basement. So we have been studying with the consultants team to make sure that the platform has been raised beyond I think the 100-year record of the flooding. So we hope we should be okay. If you recall, 10 years ago, we have a major flooding in Thailand, in Bangkok itself. and that the center zone, the CBD area, has been well protected. The site hasn't been flooded. So we hope it stay that way. But make sure that all the infrastructure has been designed and to help alleviate those flooding problems.
Thanks. Mina Marifat, she asked that the presentation shows mostly commercial buildings, offices, and hotels. Post-pandemic, the commercial office market in the US has been disrupted, with many office buildings now being empty and many being considered for conversion into housing. Are you considering the future possibility of any change of usage for your buildings?
Let me start. Maybe Pichai can jump in after. It's a little bit different. I think Bangkok, Thailand is a little bit different from the US markets. Our commercial offices are very strong, the market-wise. And especially if you were to compare the Class A buildings that we're putting into for One Bangkok. The last development actually came around about 20 years ago. I mean, there are other new office towers that's raised up in the last 10 years. But the real push didn't happen about 20 years ago. So the timing wise to go from the current conditions to the new Class A building offerings and what the internationals and the locals companies are looking for is it timed in very well. So again, our commercial market here in Bangkok is very strong. We're not looking like US where you convert the office spaces into different programs. However, we've also studied the post-pandemic, and we've understand the behaviors change, the offerings, the people, the workforce, the workplaces have changed, evolved. And if you look at our design, we provide it was still enough in the planning stage for us that we can cater to the post-pandemic solutions. And so we are able to not retrofit, but actually enhance the offerings.
Great, thanks, Russell. Huh?
I just want to add a little bit that I think well said in terms of the market of the commercial office space has been stagnant for decades. Most of the development in major developments in Bangkok has been focused on retail and residential buildings for the past 20 years. is only happening 10 years ago that few office blocks are popping up, but not in the kind of scale that happens with One Bangkok. So I had my worries because of 500,000 square meters of office space being built onto the market, but it's so far it's been proven otherwise. I mean, for me, I feel it's a bit more comfortable now that the building is not going to be empty, and people who enjoy the new district. I can see the movement from people having their own old office moving towards the new address, like One Bangkok. So far it's quite healthy.
If we get into trouble, I think we're gonna ask Architects 49 and S to move in to our offices.
Free space. No budget.
Yeah, great. So far we have no more questions from the audience, but we might have some questions from the panelists that you wish to do. I just want to make a comment. One of the reasons, the underlying reason for this program is that one of our initiative in Architecture Alumni is called Global Reach, and which is why from there comes the name that Makoto gave to the program, Global Influence and Local Solutions, and it somehow the question from me, no matter what, how has the community responded, is I would phrase it to people in Bangkok. The general population identifies culturally with this kind of high-rise, very sophisticated design-wise solutions, or they somehow they would have some sort of a recall for their local kind of solution that were mostly present at the old town. Because that's one of the questions. I always every time I go to Santa Fe, Mexico City, which is kind of a huge One Bangkok project outside of Mexico City, which people moving away from the city center, which has, I would say, perhaps could be the only city in the world with the worst traffic than Bangkok, with Mexico City. And typical architect's question is whether the people in Mexico City with such a rich architectural inheritance identified with Santa Fe. And one would say that no, it needs more, relation with the local architecture. But on the other hand, whenever you ask your friends who have moved to Santa Fe, they say they love it. So I don't know if it's more an architect's concern than a general population concern. Somehow, sometimes they feel, that is giving them an opportunity to be part of the future. That's more than a question or reflection from me. And it was interesting that on the first images that Jason showed from the SOM master plan at the beginning, the retailing was much, with a kind of a materiality, as we say in Spanish, more related to the old town than on the final projects, which are again more, design, I would say, sophisticated somehow. So that's one of the reasons why we're trying to make these programs. We did one in Germany, we did one in Latin America. We did this beautiful program, organized, developed, thought of by Makoto, with your great participation. But that's the reason why we're doing these programs, these global rich things, because that's the challenge for the future. How you manage to keep your local culture within the global influence, and what is your personal position regarding to that. But again, it's kind of a typical mumbling reflection instead of a question one gets. But it's a lovely presentation. So I don't know if Ellen, any one of you would like to say some final words on Makoto's course if you want to close the session for today.
I do have a question. Maybe this is, well, but it's for mostly for Russell, but also Pichai and Jason. Is there's this master plan, and then Fraser has brought on different architects. So who is kind of reviewing the design to make sure that when it gets interpreted, that they work together as a whole? And then in addition, does the city review the design, or the city is just controlling land use, height, and bulk and whatever, and they don't? I'm just curious, how is that worked? How does that work?
Can I answer this?
Sure.
I think Russell's role is very important in this. I think he's the anchor, basically, from the very start. A49, in fact, didn't start from the very beginning, didn't start in the master plan phase. So we more into when they start designing the buildings. We just stepped in 8 years ago. But all along, I think he's been anchoring the design and stick to the master plan. Of course, with the blessing of the committee, DC so-called design committees run by the directors of Fraser and TCC. So I think he's very important in the role that he's orchestrating, the 70-odd designers, consultants working on this project, and give me a lot of headaches every day trying to remember names. So I think credit goes to him that he kept the vehicle going, in the direction that has been set forth. I mean, by Jason and SOM team from the very beginning. I mean, to be honest, it's not all flowery, right? It's hardship as well from time to time, but I think that's part of our job every day.
Thank you. That is very helpful. Actually, we have also observed, like in many master plans, such as the Canary Wharf in London, it's because the client team has a very consistency. They're always there. So even though their design guideline is actually very simple, but because of the team continue to ask for the same quality stuff, that the project work together quite well. They change from, I mean, it's been like almost 40 years now. They have some consistency and yet different. So this is something that me as an urban designer is always concerned about. How do you bring the master plan forward, allow it to transform, and yet have an overall vision?
Yeah, speaking from an architect at SOM, it was I sort of mentioned it as I was going through the slides. We were able to see kind of how everyone was developing other parcels and bringing design ideas to the table while we were designing as well. So I don't think there was ever a risk of, we always kind of knew what KPF was doing a block, less than a block away, and KPF probably knew what we were doing. And even amongst the teams here at SOM across buildings, we were always kind of aware, and there was always like a chatter in the morning after our night of meetings of like, oh, did you see what KPF presented? And oh, did you see the newest from A49? And so there was kind of like an organic way that these sort of day-long meetings, I think for Russell, where we would kind of insert ourselves and hear and learn and kind of collaborate together in that way. It was fascinating from my side, and I learned a lot.
I mean, it was a obviously busy schedule, but when we had the Architects 49, SOM, KPF, we had a very healthy competitions. I didn't have to say much to raise the quality. I think each of the teams were raising it by themselves to top each other up. And so, when we were receiving all these, presentations, ideas, it was so plentiful. We had a lot of choices and a lot of decisions were made easily because we had so many options to explore and look at without having to say we need more options.
We have a comment from Mina, thanking us for the global outreach and the distinguished panel. She's proud to be part of Architecture Alumni. And she asked me to encourage the audience to propose ideas for global projects like this. And that's so true. I mean, we are Architecture Alumni are open to any suggestion from any one of our audience and members and non-members to propose programs like the one we have had the opportunity to be part of today. So just we're there for you guys. So Makoto, it's been your show. Would you like to make some closing remarks?
Well, it's been a wonderful presentation, and I simply say I'm so grateful for all of us and all of the audiences who have made today's presentation and Q&A sessions. I have no words to express my appreciation to this opportunity more than this. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Pamela Tang, for your nice comment on the question and answer chat. Well, then I would say it's would be all for today. And thank again, Ellen, Russell, Pichai. I just have a question for you, Pichai. How do you pronounce your last name?
Russell, try.
I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin it.
Wongwaisayawan. Yeah, Wongwaisayawan. Yeah, it's quite simple.
Quite simple. And thank you, Jason, very much. And well, thanks, Amy and Jackie, who from Alumni have accompanied us and have made this session as fluid and as good as it was. And thanks again, Makoto. So, well, we'll be seeing you. I hope to see you in Bangkok as soon as possible. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.